Here with the director of the Shaquille O'Neal documentary that is going to be featured on HBO. He is the one and only Robert Alexander. What's going on, man? How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm good.
Good.
First of all, congratulations on completing the doc and being able to disseminate it to the fan bases across the country, man.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. You forget about that for a while that people are going to see it, because you're like in a room locked away with a team for, a year. And then you're like, oh, other people are going to see this. Good. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So it's a good feeling.
Absolutely. Now, I understand you grew up a Shaquille O'Neal fan. Um, as far as being familiar with obviously with his work and everything,
Sure.
but what specifically drew you to this documentary and what did you want to come away with putting this documentary together?
I think Shaq has always been one of the most unique entertainers, performers, athletes, hybrid of all that I've ever seen. And I think he's super multifaceted. And when I looked at a project like this and it was brought to my attention, it wasn't as simple as here's just a basketball player with a story and their highlights and this is how great they were. I think there's so much more complexity to Shaq. So I was excited for the challenge and the opportunity to present that.
Now, I remember one quote that stood out to me, and it said it was something special about that one regarding Shaquille O'Neal. And you touched on, I had a chance to kind of watch the documentary ahead of time,
Okay.
and you guys
What do you
touched
think?
on, I liked it. I thought it was a fantastic documentary. I like this, and this is the part I like too, that you actually touched on the importance of Philip Harrison, and what he
Sure.
meant to Shaq's life. How much were you able to showcase about Philip Harrison and then be able to not let that overshadow what you were doing with Shaquille O'Neal and the direction that you guys were going in?
It's always a balance. It's whatever's the most honest. I mean, Shaq was very vocal about how important Sarge was to his life, his impact on him as a man, discipline of him growing up, pushing him to be the best basketball player he could be and one of the most dominant ever. And so it just felt whatever was natural. I mean, it's an organic way. Shaq talks about his youth and talks a lot about Sarge. He talks about moments in his basketball career when he felt like he needed to be pushed. And he said he got that from Sarge over anyone else. So it just felt like it was a good balance, because it was just based on what was the most honest thing we could do.
And also too, Shaq is such a huge public figure.
Yes.
How can you give me some of the were there any difficulties, I should say, as far as doing the research and trying to present a slightly different angle for the public to look at Shaq in?
I don't think so. I think one, I had his voice. A lot of times his story's been told a little bit through his voice, but through the media and certain other characters and this sort of thing. But I had the opportunity to one, have my perspective of what I was initially excited about, but then what happens organically, like as I talk to every person that we're interviewing for the series, and then just honestly just having Shaq's voice, and having him at a certain place in his life when he's ready to go into depth on what his story has meant to him. And so it just organically is going to be its own thing.
And how were you able to build chemistry with Shaquille O'Neal? Obviously, he's a lovable guy. Everybody
Yeah.
likes him. I mean, he illuminates any room that he walks into. But
Yeah.
specifically, you two had to build that chemistry. Obviously, there had to be a trust there for you to tell his
Yeah.
story the way it needed to be told.
We are just who we are, and I think that if you're prepared for the moment, you're not going to waste it. And I think that you can't waste talent's time of a certain level. I've been very blessed with the talent I've worked with over these years as an artist. And you do not go into any situation being underprepared and not thoroughly ready to present something that you believe in. And I think he had a lot of trust in me with what my initial creative execution plan was. And then just throughout our conversations, I mean, he's just a great, phenomenal human being. And we just kind of vibed and had good energy. And that's a big part of these projects also. It's like you got to feel like this is worthy of the moment, or we can do something special together because this is a collaboration, a full collaboration.
What were a couple of things that you learned about Shaquille that you didn't know prior to?
Um, I talked before about him just being this incredibly he doesn't take any steps back. There's no reservation in how he approaches his business approach. I think it's just, you see his charisma up close. It's just a different reality. I think it's a different reality to see like his level of charisma and also his level of calculated planning for his career. It wasn't just like, I just have a great smile. It's like, this is a plan. I want to be a level of success that I don't think any athlete has been before. And he's been able to achieve that. And he had that plan at 16, 17 years old. He created a logo for himself while he was still in college. Like, people don't usually think that way, and he did that very early on. And he just has this incredibly strong sense of what his brand is and the best way for it to be presented. And his self-awareness makes that possible.
SHAQ has always been ahead of the curve to me, just being a fan. And obviously I call him the most dominant ever, the MDE, because I feel like he has been such a phenomenal figure on and off the court as well. I'm sure you guys couldn't capture every single thing in this 4-part series. What were some of the outtakes where you guys had to make certain decisions? Say, does this go in or does this part go out? And how, what was the decision-making process?
There's a flow. I mean, I've been trying to do this calculation, but I think between like 60 to 80% of what you shoot doesn't actually exist, in the cut, just because it's difficult to include everything. But I think it was just, we had a really strong plan, but it evolves as you have more conversation, as you unearth more footage and this sort of thing. So you have to be able to be flexible, but at its core, I don't think there's anything really significant that, there was a ton of stuff on his music career that we didn't include. I mean, he's a multi-platinum selling rap artist, and we touched on it a little bit, but, there was I will admit there was some much more in-depth packages that we built around it. We still kept some great stuff that I'm proud of, but, we spent a lot of time going into way more depth on that and a little bit on his DJing. And he famously was with Biggie, the morning that he passed away. He was hanging out with Biggie on that same day. And, there's a lot of great things like that we just didn't have the time for, I mean, his story is worthy of, an 8-10 part thing, but we had the opportunity to make 4, and I'm really proud of what we came to the decision of to hold on to in it.
And you spoke about SHAQ's music career, obviously the late great Biggie Smalls that he was with, but he was also, to me, I felt like SHAQ was bi-coastal because he would work with East Coast artists, obviously, Wu-Tang Clan, Warren G out here in California, DJ Quick, Snoop, Nate Dogg. There were just a lot of artists that really resonated with Shaquille O'Neal. And I'm gonna have to separate you from the director. I'm gonna ask you from the fan perspective. What parts did you want in the documentary that you were able to get in for the public to see?
My goal from the first day I agreed to do this was that so many generations don't know not only how dominant SHAQ was, but just like his charisma and style, and his presence in those early days in the NBA. Like, he was a force, but he was also like he had such a unique build and how humongous he was, but athletic he was, but also like at that same time, he'd be in movies. And if you love the movies or hate the movies, because, aren't that great. Like, but he still had this presence and this quality and a coolness and this kind of swag that you may not know of to the depth that is today, because he's really leaned into being who he is, which is great and cool and fun and great in all these commercials. But like, he was an early icon, in a really cool way. And I just really wanted to make sure that felt visual. People were able to connect with that, of his impact in his early breakthrough into the NBA.
You talked about this documentary a year in progress as far as putting it all together, shooting, editing, things of that nature. One thing also that stood out to me was the impactfulness of his mother and how impactful she was, and how you guys were able to showcase have his mother speak about Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
How special was that for you, just to have his mom and to be able to have his mom talk about him when he's not necessarily in the room?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, when you're lucky enough to be given the trust to do this, you interact with intimate people, in this person's life that you wouldn't interact with otherwise. So it was very important for me to take a lot of pride and care in how I approached my conversations with his mother. And she was so kind, and she was so inspiring and such a force herself. It was really easy to understand what Shaq's charisma and presence come from after meeting his mother. And so it's just something you're honored to do, and she is the foundation, she is the foundation for who Shaq is. So it's just something I didn't take lightly, and was really, really loved doing it.
Shaquille O'Neal really stepped on the scene when he came to LA as a member of the LA Lakers, and then eventually went on to win 3 championships with arguably the greatest player to ever play the game in the late, great Kobe Bryant. And I noticed you guys were able to touch on that, but there wasn't a lot of footage with Kobe Bryant. And it was, to my understanding, that the family had requested to you not to use a lot of footage. Is that because they have a documentary of their own coming out? Did they give you any kind of specific reason behind that?
I'm not exactly sure. It could be a number of reasons, but initially there was, I'm very proud of what we ended up with as far as Kobe, because I want to make sure his presence is there, his impact, his relationship with Shaq, and I'm proud of that. The way we approached it, there was a little bit more depth in Kobe's voice throughout the time spent in Lakers, and a lot of kind of his perspective, where we could capture it, what was going on. And his family asked us to reduce it, like an overall reduction, and never anything specific, just like an overall reduction for the reasons, I could speculate, but my job is just to respect wishes. And that's what we do. We move on, and we do the best we can with what we have, but there's nothing other than respect it. I have an immense amount of respect for, obviously, Kobe and who he is to the game of basketball and to the world. So it's just only out of respect. This is what you need, and this is what we'll do for you. So,
what were some of those conversations with Shaq as far as his relationship with Kobe Bryant at that time, and then obviously later on when they became older, and that we witnessed the sit down between those two, and then they grew. It seemed like they grew a friendship or some type of relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I mean, when you're sit down with someone and you do this, we as fans, us as outsiders, sometimes we're like all caught up on, I want to, this moment and this time, and is this article real? Is this fight really happen? All that stuff. And I'll be honest, everyone spoke. Rick Fox, Derek Fisher, all these Shaq, all the people who were there at the time, Phil Jackson, they gave us great stories on that perspective, but it's also about something where we evolve and we shift. And, Shaq looks at this like, that was 20 plus years ago, and I'm a completely different person now. And I remember those times, and this is how I felt at the time. This is how I felt now. And so, we're always trying to do a combination of then and now, but you got to do the most honest thing, and honestly, he's where he is now, where he did reconcile with Kobe. He did realize that sometimes he was immature, sometimes he was being malicious, sometimes his ego took over, and that ego is necessary to be a ball player at that level, right? Without question. So he had to find his balance, he had to find his balance, and where we ended up is just, that was a time. This is how I felt. This is what it was. And this is where I'm now, because if you watch the series, you could see that there is a deep emotional hit that Shaq has taken losing Kobe. And it is still present, and he's still dealing with it. And, he doesn't take that lightly, what Kobe meant to his life and where he is now,
You mentioned earlier, too, that Shaq lives with no regrets. He doesn't look back. He always moves forward. With that lack of development of a relationship with Kobe, would that be considered a regret from Shaquille O'Neal's standpoint, do you think?
I mean, in the series, he's straight up. He's like, I wish I would have talked to him more. I wish I would have connected with him more. I wish I would have reached out to him to see how he was doing. So he talks about that. He talks about mistakes he's made. So I don't think he's above that,
You also go into the relationship rather with him and Dwayne Wade when they arrived in Miami,
Yeah.
and that unique relationship that led them to a NBA title just a couple of years after his arrival.
Mhm.
And when you're speaking with Dwayne Wade, what did you get? We saw what Dwayne Wade said on camera, but what was your take with Dwayne Wade off camera as far as being a part of this documentary and what his relationship really was with Shaquille O'Neal?
I think he gives Shaq a lot of credit for where he is now as a basketball player, the career he had, and where he is in just off the court business. You know, Shaq was clearly a great mentor to D Wade and really helped to kind of propel him to being the best he could be. And I think there's a lot of admiration and love, you know. And that was one of my favorite things is, you know, you get deep into these projects, right? And you're talking to all these people and you have producers that support you in story, you know, of his early years, middle years, later years, now years. And when you sit down with like Penny and you're talking about Magic days, and then months later sit down with D Wade talking about, you know, the Heat days, it's like a completely different conversation you're having. It's like they're like Penny and D Wade are talking about a completely different Shaquille O'Neal. And when you get to experience moments like that, that's really special, you know, because you're actually literally like capturing the evolution of someone's life, you know?
Now, you being a fan of Shaq has donned a lot of uniforms in his playing career. But if
Yeah.
you had three jerseys that you could capture from Shaquille O'Neal, what would those jerseys, what teams and what jerseys would they be?
Definitely his rookie year Magic one for sure. The 99 2000 Lakers one. And just, you know, one of them's cool all black Heat ones because it's just dope. And, you know, he got his last ring there. So I think something in there for sure. And we did actually, the team, we went on a search. We got a bunch of his jerseys that we actually had for the production. So which is really cool.
How much fun did you have? I mean, I know it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of preparation, but how much fun did you have just being around, not just Shaquille O'Neal, but just having your staff putting this great documentary together and being able to just finally bring it to fruition? Like, I know it's gotta touch you somewhere, just deep beyond a director, as a fan, as a person that witnessed him in real time as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you do this, because it's fun. You know, I mean, honestly, especially after we got more acclimated with each other, like the second time I sat down with Shaq, it was we both couldn't stop laughing. We were having so much fun. It was hard to get through everything we had to get through, and he's just so much fun. It was great. I mean, sitting with Phil Jackson. I mean, loving basketball. Listening to the Zen Master break down philosophies of basketball was really, really special. It's great. It's great to do this stuff, you know?
You also got a chance to talk to the Godfather himself, Pat Riley.
Yeah, Pat Riley was great, man. And that's what's surprising too. It's like I didn't know he has this incredibly strong faith I wasn't aware of. You know, he was open about his anxiety as a coach. Everyone knew him as this fiery, the slick back hair and the cool cat. But he was like talked about the intensity of what it meant to him to coach. And that's what's cool is like when you sit someone down like this and they're reflecting, you get this really deep honesty you weren't expecting, you know, and it's really surprising. But, you know, Pat Riley's just, I mean, he's a legend, man. And he lived up to it without question, sitting with him. And he had a lot of love to give to Shaq. He's like, you know, I hadn't won a championship in decades before I had Shaq, you know, and he talks about how he's going to appreciate that forever. So those moments are special.
Absolutely. I mean, you did, like I said before, you did a phenomenal job. I think everybody contributed in a way that it really flowed, and you really saw the maturation of Shaquille O'Neal, and even beyond the basketball years, and the stuff that he's doing now on TNT as an analyst as well. But larger than life figure. This is a guy that people, I know you guys didn't get a chance to touch on it, but just being in Los Angeles, I know some of the things that he was able to do in the streets of Los Angeles, really connecting people in those neighborhoods and really doing a lot of charitable work that didn't get seen. How were you guys able to do that, and it just wasn't enough time to put in the doc, or what happened with that aspect of it?
As far as his charitable work?
As far as the charitable work, yeah.
You know what? He's someone who doesn't like to promote that type of stuff. And he didn't tell me and say anything about that, but I knew that going in. So for me, it wasn't something that you showcase. He does it to do it. And he's proud to do it. And it's not about praise. And so I think that's something that we let be this organic, beautiful thing that he just does on earth, where he'll go buy people bikes and cars and, like let him just be that. So that was an important choice that I didn't want to make it because, you don't want to make these things feel like a fluff piece and you're just
Right.
like saying how perfect and great they are because it's not, So, it was a conscious decision to say, like, of course we can touch on some of these things, but we're not going to spend time and make it feel like it's forced,
Yeah, this is one of the realest documentaries I have seen in quite some time. Just having his voice telling his story, but then you telling a story within the story as far as your direction goes in these 4-part series. How much did it help to have the Michael Jordan documentary? We just recently saw the Redeem Team documentary. How much did that help to be able to put this documentary together, to have an audience and to let the corporate executives know that, hey, there is an audience for big time athletes, that people do want to see a peek in their lives and bringing documentaries to fruition?
Yeah, I think that's just inevitably the business of, how this works, right? It's like, what does the marketplace want? What are people, attracted to? There's definitely like, it's like a hot topic right now, right? Legends of a certain era or whatever to have their story told. So, yeah, they all just live on their own. It's like, of course you make these things. Like I don't make anything in comparison to something else or to compete with anything else. I just make what I feel like is the best thing that I can do, and let the world take it as it is or call it what it is or, all that good stuff. But yeah, it's just that there's definitely a marketplace for it. I'm sure all these cats have crazy ego. So I'm sure SHAQ saw that somebody else has their thing and whatever. And okay, all right, now it's my time, So I guarantee that went into his agreement to greenlight this thing. So, it's just part of the culture we're in right now.
Well, November 23rd, HBO Max, they get a chance to see the 4-part documentary of Shaquille O'Neal. Lastly, what's next for you? What's next for you for Robert Alexander as the director? What are some of the projects you want to work on moving forward?
A whole bunch of stuff, there's some scripted stuff that I'm doing, that I'm really excited about. There's a movie that I wrote that I'm gonna hopefully make next year, and another one I'm developing now that I'll probably make the following year. A whole bunch of stuff, there's some other really exciting doc projects that I'm getting involved in now. A little bit of everything, I just love making art, man. So it's like there's definitely things that are in my heart, that I'm excited to get into. There's people that I've always admired on a certain level that I'm excited to collaborate with. So it's a beautiful thing, so I'm just kind of out there building and cooking and doing whatever I can.
Yeah, besides this documentary, what is your who would be your ultimate dream documentary to do, to be featured?
I don't know. I mean, obviously I've been blessed to work with LeBron, overseeing the shop for a bunch of years. So, when he's ready to tell his story, maybe that's something I'll do, if I'm blessed enough to do that. I've had the pleasure to work with, President Obama, once before. So I'd love to work with him again. I mean, it's an open book, it's kind of all depends, but I'm sure there are other names, but those are the ones that kind of jump out at me right now.
Well, if LeBron is smart, he would definitely use you because you have a great eye for directing. I'm just telling you that just off this.
Oh, thanks, bro. That means a lot, man. Thanks. That really means a lot. Thanks for watching. It really means a lot that people actually sit down and watch this stuff,
Hey, man, this Shaquille O'Neal. This is box office. This is big time. You can't help but not watch Shaquille O'Neal's documentary. Even if you love the man, you hated the man.
Yeah.
If you semi like the man, you're gonna sit down and watch because it's such an intriguing documentary that you put together. And like I said, you being the director told a story within the story, and I think that's an incredible recipe for an incredible project and a creative project such as this. So congratulations.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely.
This is the one and only Robert Alexander here on the NH Experience. Appreciate your time. Let everyone know where they can continue to keep up with all of your great work and future projects as well on social media.
Yeah, so I have a company called Hardware Studios. So this is obviously one of our projects. We got some other great stuff coming. I'm Rob Art Alexander on Instagram. So instead of Robert, Rob Art. So that's out there. And I guess that's pretty much it, bro.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time once again. And we'll definitely talk to you soon. And make sure everybody checks out the Shaquille O'Neal documentary that's going to be on HBO November 23rd, 4-part series. You definitely don't want to miss this great piece of art. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.